Hello, I'm Richard Murphy. I want to talk about what numbers mean. Actually, I want to talk about what some particular numbers mean and within a government context, because this is an issue I've been looking at quite a lot of late. And I want to talk about two particular numbers that I've been exploring, which are of massive significance to some people in the UK. Now, one of those numbers is the claim that we have got national debt of £2 trillion. A presenter on Channel 4 News, when discussing this, said, "That's really frightening." And given that Jackie Long is a person who I met and who I respect and who appears to be a person of sound mind, for her to say this is really frightening was quite surprising. So I thought, well, I think I know what's in the national debt. I'm an economist. I've talked about it for years. I just want to go and check out what she's frightened by. And I went to look at the Office for National Statistics website to discover what actually made up the £2004 billion, which is £2 trillion of national debt. And I've got to tell you, my answer is I don't know. It's really deeply disappointing to admit that, because I've been an economist for a long time. I started studying economics in 1976. I've been a chartered accountant since 1982. And I was presented with a pile of statistics, and I'm pretty familiar with statistics. And despite all the data that was available in a host of spreadsheets from the Office for National Statistics, I don't actually know what is behind that figure, which a national news presenter could describe as frightening. Now, I have put some figures on my blog as to what I can find out, but there was one particular number I want to talk about, which I simply find inexplicable. Almost 10% of our UK national debt, or 195 billion at the end of July 2020, is called the Bank of England contribution to the public sector net debt. Now, I can read a set of accounts. I prepared many thousands of accounts in my time and read many more than that. And so I went to look at the Bank of England's accounts to work out where this figure of around 194, 195 billion came from that was turning up in the national debt. And just in case I got it wrong, I recruited some people that I happen to be acquainted with to also look at it, one of whom has actually worked in the Office for National Statistics and thinks he knows his way around these figures better than I do. We couldn't answer that question of where 195 billion comes from. Literally, I can't work it out. There are some other numbers inside the national debt that I can't work out. There's a figure for other debt, including non-sterling debt, but there's no backup to that. That's £72 billion. There's a figure for cash held by the government in the calculation of national debt, which actually reduces the total. It's almost £250 billion. But I can't tell you where that money is. Now, this matters, because if a number is frightening, and if it is published by the Office for National Statistics in a way that is intended to attract press publicity, they do, at an absolute minimum, have a duty to explain it, in my opinion. They do need to provide the backup and tell us where the data comes from. And yet I don't know. I've looked at their spreadsheets, I've followed through the numbers from page to page, but there's no support for the numbers I've referred to. They're simply numbers that have appeared in a spreadsheet without explanation as to where they've come from, and particularly in the case of the Bank of England contribution to public sector net debt, where I have accounts which can back the data up, I can't find them. I don't believe that's good enough. You can't frighten the public with a number you can't explain. You can't tell MPs that policy has to change on the basis of this figure for debt, and yet not provide an explanation to them as to what it actually means. And there's another number I'm really interested in, which has come up in the last week or so, and that is published in Scotland. It's called the Government Expenditure and Revenue Scotland Statement, GERS for short. And I've looked at this data over a number of years now, and I actually produced a term to describe it, which is crap. This is a technical term, by the way. I'm not being rude. It stands for completely rubbish approximations, because the figure which supposedly describes the government deficit in Scotland is just made up. I mean, I won't go into the detail because we're going to make another video on that. But The point is that, again, data is being produced to suggest that there is a story and an action required when there's no proper backup to explain whether the figure is right. Now, this worries me because people are frightened by big numbers. That's quite reasonable. Most people have no idea what a billion is, let alone what a trillion is, how many noughts are in it, or anything else. A trillion is a billion. It's thousands of millions. So it's so big that it's beyond most people's comprehension. And yet it still needs explanation. And if the government isn't willing to provide that explanation, what they're telling us is that we should be worried about something that, frankly, it seems that they themselves don't understand. And that should not be happening. That's the absolute opposite of accountability. That's the absolute opposite of good decision making. And if, with my experience, I can't find this data, then I'm worried. I have to tell you, I've put in freedom of information requests to both the Bank of England and the Office for National Statistics to ask them where the number comes from. And a number of people, quite well informed, have said to me, well, we want to know the answer too. Now you've noticed that there's a problem. And I believe we will get to the bottom of this. I hope we will. I hope the government will tell me what the answer is. But we shouldn't have to go to that length. When a number comes out that is that important, it's the duty of the government to explain it, to tell us what numbers really mean, and whether we should be worried about them rather than leave them hanging there, seemingly threatening because they're so big, without providing any reassurance or explanation to tell us whether that's true or not. What numbers means matters. Decent explanations matter even more, and it's time that the government supplied them. I'm Richard Murphy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this video series on YouTube if you're interested. Also look for us on Facebook. I am on Twitter @Richard J. Murphy. And at the same time, look at my blog, Tax Research UK, where you can find much more on these themes. And I'll see you again soon.